I'm so excited for this conversation. I have my friend Madison on. Welcome, Madison.
Yay. So glad to be here.
Yeah, we've been talking about this conversation. I've never featured anyone who specializes in Ayurveda. And it's funny, like when you start talking about a topic, and then like I met another woman who does Ayurveda, and I'm like, okay, this is something I need to talk about, I think, on the podcast. And we
I
got to
love that.
connect through a fertility summit that we both spoke at. And I'm so grateful that Jillian connected us. You're here in Colorado. And then I got to attend one of your fertility workshops. It was amazing. And just like meeting you in person, like that's like the real magic, right? When you get to connect like face to face. And I'm like, you got to come on the podcast.
Yes. Yes.
So thanks for being here. I want to like allow you to share a bit of yourself, and we're going to define in this conversation what is Ayurveda. Let's demystify it and break it down. I know it's probably a lot simpler than people like make it out to be. Um, and your specialty is in the fertility space. So that's why I have you on for this really spicy good episode.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. How did you get into the world of Ayurveda? Like what led you to it?
Yeah. That's a great question. So I was always really interested in health growing up. And um, I moved to Denver in 2013, where I did yoga teacher training. And I should back up a little bit. Prior to that, I studied in college, I studied business. It was kind of later in college. I was like, I'm actually really interested in, food as medicine and
Mm.
nutrition, but I had taken a bunch of business classes. So I was like, okay, let me just add a nutrition minor and graduate. My dad's like, just graduate. If you want to go back to school, you can. And then I moved to Denver, where I did yoga teacher training like pretty immediately. And that's where I learned about Ayurveda. And just so much of it made a lot of sense to me. It's like, this
Mm.
is so incredible. So that was 2013. So as soon as I started, learning Ayurveda, I started
Yeah.
studying in January of 2014. And Ayurveda is, I like to call it like the OG, or the original holistic healing system. So
Mm.
it is a very comprehensive, mind, body, and spirit healing system. And at that same time, I was struggling with a lot of my own health issues, where I wasn't menstruating. Um, and I had really bad acne. I had a lot of digestive issues. I had a really difficult relationship with food, overeating, over like more of like that, binging out, although I didn't, yeah. So anyway, binging and like over exercising was the pattern that I found myself in. And Ayurveda really helped me reform a better relationship with myself, and understanding that, hey, my body's talking to me. How
Mm.
can I take these signals and cues and really, support myself at a very deep level? And so as soon as I started studying, I started like applying the principles to my own life. And, one thing that really stuck out to me was different foods for different body types. And I think that's what really sets Ayurveda apart, is like, hey, my body is different than your body. We can't be doing the same thing to really, it's like my body has different needs than your body. And how
Mm.
do we both honor our bodies for what they truly need? And it's, that goes down to how I'm moving my body, what I'm eating. Um, the rest that I need to take is just different than somebody else's body. So once I
Yeah.
started to apply these principles, my health completely transformed, where my digestion was so much better. My skin started to clear. My periods became regular, and I just felt so much better. It's like I had this, one, it's like I was able to take that power back into my own hands, and
Mm.
like feel truly radiant and vibrant.
Yeah.
So that's the initial story of how I learned about Ayurveda.
Yeah. So did business go right out the window? You're like, I don't want to pursue that path anymore.
Yeah, I'm like, well, and like I have my own business, right? It's like the blending of
True.
both worlds.
They're
And I'm like,
blended. Yes.
with with Ayurveda and entrepreneurship too.
Right.
So I'm grateful to be able to do this. And there's just a lot of education, because I feel like a lot of people don't know what Ayurveda is. When
Yeah.
you start researching it, there's so much information out there. But if you heard Ayurveda, most people would be like, what are you talking about?
Mm. In the workshop, you said Ayurveda is knowledge of life.
Yeah.
And you talked about food as medicine. It's really root cause focused and bridging East and West. Like dive into a little bit more, like explain knowledge of life. What does that mean to you?
Yeah. So Ayurveda, literally, so it's a Sanskrit word, and it means, Veda means knowledge, and Ayu means life. So it's, the knowledge or the science of life.
Mm.
And what does that mean? Well, it means that it's like how do we really live in tune with nature? If you think about it, our world is so disconnected from nature.
Mm.
Screens on all the time. We have connection to the world at any point, right? And like our nervous systems weren't built to handle modern day life. And like, how do we really reconnect back with our nature? And again, like I talked about, we focus a lot on the elements in Ayurveda. So earth, water, fire, air, and space, and understanding that, hey, all of these elements are interacting in our outer world. Those same interactions are happening within our bodies, right? So that explains, my body has more fire, right? Your body can have more water or more earth, right? And like our bodies are just different. And like, how do we understand that and then provide our bodies with what they need? And it's really, so much of Ayurveda, which I'm so drawn to it because it just makes sense.
Mm.
If you have a lot of fire, if you add more fire, you're going to create more fire. But if you provide the opposite, it's going to create balance. And that's what we're looking for is, homeostasis and balance.
So good. I love your focus on preconception and conscious conception. I think that's why I like resonate so much with what you're doing. And we're very aligned in helping in the preparation stage, this holistic approach to fertility. And I've heard you say vitality is fertility.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah. Yeah, it
I
is.
think,
So,
yeah, go ahead.
no, you go ahead.
I was just thinking, one of the things I truly believe in is like, if we're calling in life, we have to be living life fully and lit up. I know you talk a lot about prana and life force, and that's something like
Yes.
you and I are so similar in it because it's this missing link, I think, right? And especially the women I serve in the fertility space going through IVF, it is so medically driven. It is so focused on numbers and data. And like we lose sight of like living within, living lit up from within. And it does really start from us. And I know you kind of believe that too.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and it's like, when we feel alive, right? Which you mentioned prana, right? If we're eating
Yeah.
foods that are full of prana, which means, life force or life-giving energy. And an example of that is, if you were to have a garden and you went and picked vegetables fresh from the garden, and then you prepared a meal, that meal is literally bursting with life, right?
Mm.
And the more that you are literally bursting with life, you're going to be
Yes.
able to create life. And I so often use this garden analogy to understand fertility because there's multiple aspects to it. And, the more that we have this like spark, right? I've worked with women who have like mentioned, they've gone through transfers and then they feel this spark. It's like they literally feel life,
Mm. Mm-hmm.
at the moment of, a moment of creation, which is
Yeah.
pretty incredible, right? And I think that there's something, and I think fertility is such an interesting space because there's this science, but there's also this art to it and this like mystery and magic of
Yeah.
creating life that we have to really honor too. And like, Ayurveda is a science to create life and to sustain life and create, you know, um, vitality from within and like that life force.
Mm. So good. And I know one of your big things that you focus on is digestion. I've heard you say it's not what we eat, but it's how we digest. So digestion is like has everything to do with fertility. And it's often like something we don't maybe pay attention to, right?
Totally. Yeah.
So
I mean,
digestion, like nourishing, like how we are fueling our body. It's like that is the foundation.
yeah, it is. And in Ayurveda, there's this beautiful science that the digestive process happens first, and then all of the tissues, it's this cascade effect where 7 tissues get nourished in the body. There are things like blood, muscle tissue, fat tissue, bone tissue, nervous system tissue, and then reproductive tissue is the very last tissue to be nourished. I think, when I first saw that, I was like, that makes so much sense, right? It's like,
It's the last tissue to get nourished.
mm-hmm. And that makes sense, right? Biologically, like if we're, bringing in the nervous system concept, but if we're focused on survival, reproduction is, secondary, right? And that's so important is like, how do we really shift the nervous system to be like, how can I make my body feel safe enough,
Mm-hmm.
right? And like, how do we create this balance in mind and body to signal safety?
100%, right? It starts from this. I focus a lot on the energetic alignment, chakras, the root chakra, laying this foundation of feeling safe. And I've heard you talk, like you mentioned, like a garden, right? The soil is our uterus and the blood is the water, the ovum is the seeds. So it's like we are literally planting, we're fertilizing and creating this really nourishing, warm environment for life to thrive.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's exactly, exactly what we're doing. So you mentioned the soil. What
Yeah.
are you going to plant in? You want to clear it, make sure that it's well fertilized. The seeds, which is egg and sperm, and that's really important too, right? It's a 50-50. And I think, so often, the sperm is not considered as much as the egg or, female body to carry baby. But the reality is, like, life cannot be created without seed.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And, yes, we need all of these, but, you can have the soil, but you need the seed. And then nourishment. So, fertilizing and then making sure that once you plant seed, that there's this ongoing continued nourishment. And, a lot of that comes down to like digestion and being able to, it's not just, I'm maybe you feel like you're taking the right diet, but if you're not digesting it, your body's not actually, your cells aren't actually being bathed in that nutrition, or, your uterus, right? Focusing on uterine lining, which is so important. And then the last piece is timing, which I think is such a fascinating concept too, to
Mm-hmm.
dive into. But timing, as they say, timing is everything.
It is. There's a lot I could say on that one too. It's like
Yes.
there's an element of letting go of the timing, like because there's so much of surrender and trust through this, but it's also trusting that your body has that innate wisdom, right? Um, but I want to go back to the seed a bit just for a second. So I
Yeah.
know women who are listening, preparing for, say, an egg retrieval, it's ideal to start like 3 months, 4 months in preparation to help your egg quality. And for sperm, is it about 2 to 3 months?
Yeah. So sperm's like 72 days. So yeah, like 2 to 3 months.
And you work with
Yeah.
many men or in your practice, mostly
I
women
do.
or do both? Like,
Mostly women, but also men. I think that's such an
yeah.
so important to focus on, again, because it's 50
Mm-hmm.
50. And I think, for both, and especially for those who are undergoing IVF, is like that, this time period is like, really pausing and focusing on this and really doing whatever you can to optimize these different pieces before you plant is so important. And, there's a lot of, everyone's history is so unique, but I also like to say, hey, if you've got digestive issues, you might need to take a little longer to reset those prior to those, the 90 to 100 days or 3 to 4 months before egg retrieval. And, if you're like, I don't have a lot of time, do what you can, right? That's really important. It's like, it's not a zero sum game. It's like whatever you can do is going to support and move the needle for you.
Yeah. It's so important to get testing, I think, for both partners. I mean, we had male factor issues. And so get some of this information up front. You're
Yeah.
not wasting time and really, getting support on areas that are more challenging, right, than others.
Yeah. And I want to add one piece of that too. For my functional hormone training, learning more about, I don't know if you talk about this, but like DNA and DNA fragmentation being a really important thing to test too.
Yeah.
Because like, the general sperm tests don't cover that. And that's really, really important to know that piece of the puzzle too.
Yeah. I did do an episode, I feel like it was a couple of years ago on DNA fragmentation with my
Okay,
doctor. So that
great.
that is a topic out there. So go back and listen to that one.
Yes.
But let's talk about like first steps to identify maybe what element you're in, your body type. I know you had us do a questionnaire when I went to your workshop, and I had very similar numbers, but then I kind of went through it again and I was like, I think I lean more towards, which one was it? The kapha, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But I could like pick up Vata, Pitta, Kapha. Like, okay, people are like, what are you talking about? These
Yeah.
doshas. Like, let's dive in a little bit, like your framework, what things you're looking at and identifying the body type to get started, like to guide us on how to eat better and all these things.
Yeah. Yeah. So high level, again, we're looking at the elements, which I mentioned, and these elements break into what we call different doshas. And the doshas help to understand, there's so many cycles and patterns like we talked about in the workshop too, but, understanding your body, we all have different body builds and different frames, and that helps to identify, bone structure and where you're at. So let's start there, and then we can add we can layer on
Perfect.
more from there. So earth and water, so that's kapha type, like we talked a little bit. So kapha types are generally going to have just bigger bones, maybe, bigger eyes, fuller hair, like just this beauty, this like lushness. Pittas are going to be mostly fire, and they're kind of like in the middle. So, medium-sized bone, generally more muscular, more athletic, medium-sized eyes, hair is somewhere in the middle, medium lips, medium hands, so somewhere in the middle. And then vata is going to be generally thinner boned. It can be harder to, keep weight on or to gain weight. Smaller eyes, like thinner hair,
Mm.
smaller ears, just everything's, smaller, wrist size can be smaller. And then, layering onto that, so vata types can tend towards dryness, so more like constipation, more anxiety. Vata relates a lot to nervous system. So, if you're like feeling really anxious, like, hey, my vata is out of balance, right?
Mm.
Air and space is becoming more and more predominant, right? And you think about that energetically too, is like air and space is more up here, where kapha's earth and water is like more grounded, right? Kapha types can be way more grounded and easy, chill, go with the flow. They can tend towards those, like just doing what's comfortable, like doing something, that they don't normally do, is like, I don't want to do that. It
Yeah.
doesn't feel good. They can tend towards more, like heaviness in the body, and like more like lethargy, maybe some depression, more, blood sugar issues, cholesterol issues. So those kinds of things. For those who are more pitta, fire, they can tend towards, more heat-like things in the body. So acne, rashes, redness, like more, fiery personalities, right? Very direct, very, driven and like goal-oriented. Like, I'm going to go do that thing, get out of my way. Um,
Mm.
so yeah, that's just a little bit to understand the different doshas and how that manifests, physically, mentally, emotionally as well.
Thank you for breaking that down. Can
Yeah.
you often look at somebody and like immediately tell like what they are?
Generally, I mean, there's always
Yeah.
some cases, right? So generally, you can be dual doshic. So for instance, I'm pitta vata,
Okay.
meaning, predominant in pitta, and I also have vata too. And that means, I can tend towards like more dryness, right? More anxiety, like the vata can go out of balance, and also depends where you live. Like we live in a climate where it's like it's dry here, and that's
Mm.
really important to remember. Versus like if you lived on the beach where it's like, hey, there's like so much like moisture, and it's just different, right? So we
Yeah.
look
Yeah.
at, look at these differences. But yeah, I mean, generally you can look at body frames to help understand, or, personalities is really helpful. It's like we've all met someone who's really fiery, right?
Yeah.
Or someone
Mm.
who's like a creative, right? They're like, constantly thinking about all of these things that they can be creating and doing.
Mm. So good. And is this through hormone testing? Like, how do you identify this in somebody?
Yeah. So, Ayurveda is a 5,000-year-old science, right? So this is like way predates testing. And in my practice, I like to blend the mixture of East and West, because that can be really helpful. But, Ayurveda is based on just, looking at someone, like identifying patterns. Feeling your pulse is another really helpful way. So if you've done acupuncture before, maybe you've had your pulse felt. I'm looking for qualities when I feel your pulse, understanding, um, what's happening. You can even feel things like what's happening in organs, digestion, energy. Like there's so much you can read from the pulse, which is really cool. Also, there's questionnaires that you can take too. So
Mm.
I have my fertility type test through my website. So you can go and answer questions and just get a feel for where you're landing. I find usually those are pretty accurate. So it's helpful.
That's good to know. Oh my gosh. Um, oh, where do I want to jump into? I mean, yeah, I think all this is so helpful. There's many who are going through fertility challenges, like they're trying everything, they're doing it all. And this might be one area that individuals haven't explored yet. And nutrition is so key that we often overlook. Um, Eating really nourishing whole foods. Something I heard you talk about, I wanted to ask you, was not eating like leftovers. So, okay, for people that might meal prep, are those considered leftovers?
They are. Yeah.
Okay,
I
let's talk
know.
about this.
It's like, yeah. So this goes back to we talked about the concept of prana. Prana is vitality and life-giving energy. And gave the example of, the garden, we go and get the food and we make it. The contrary is if you were doing like McDonald's drive-through and you get your hamburger, it's been frozen and fried, and
Mm.
your hamburgers have been fried. Canned foods, it's like it loses that life force.
Mm.
And same thing with foods. It's like if you have a meal and then have leftovers, it's never going to taste as good as the first time you have it. The caveat might be like soup, right? Sometimes people say, oh, soup's like so much better second day. It can be. But we lose some of that life force. And that's why it's important. And I think there's a balance of ideal and like what's practical. I always tend to be like, what's practical, right? Are you going to eat something that you made yesterday? Is that a better option than eating nothing? Way better option. Please choose to eat something. And I think that's really important to remember is like, you have to fuel your body and you have to do what works for you. If you are a big meal prepper, meal prep on Sunday, maybe just do like 2 days and then make something Tuesday night that you can have for the rest of the week. So I think there's ways to take these principles and make them really approachable for you. And, like maybe instead of meal prepping breakfast, maybe you make your breakfast every day fresh. Great. Like anything, again, it's not all or nothing. It's like anything that you can do to start to move that needle towards supporting yourself is helpful. And, just bringing it back to nervous system, right? If doing these things are going to way stress you out, what's better? And I think supporting your nervous system and your mental health is really important.
Everything.
Yeah. I do want to touch a little bit on, I know you talked about Ayurveda and, and I can give a little bit more context because we're talking a lot about, food as medicine, but Ayurveda really has such an array of ways to support. And I think it's really what I found is like I studied nutrition and I found that Ayurveda took it like 10 steps deeper, meaning, one is like, are you eating for your body type? Two, how are you digesting it? And like, protein's a great conversation to have. Protein is, protein, which can be very helpful. And it's very important to get your protein, but not all protein is created equal. Having, protein bars, protein powders are really popular, but they can be very difficult for your body to digest. And I think that that's really important is like, how can we get whole food protein? So if that's, beans or lentils, or, meat, like how can you eat it more from its source versus eating something in Ayurveda, we use the word, ama, which can be, if we're not digesting something, it creates ama in the body and in the mind too. And that's like a blockage. So the example of a pipe, right? If things aren't flowing freely, they're going to start to, back up and create disconnection. I think this is so important for, just digestion, but also understanding how hormones function in the body too, right? If there's a disconnect, the message isn't going to be heard clearly. And and when we remove that and really clear the pathways, hormones can move freely through the body, right? They're messengers and they need clear space to move through. We focus a lot on nervous system too, like we've talked about, but Ayurveda is frequently referred to as the sister science of yoga. So, the Ayurveda is like, how do we care for our bodies so that the yoga can go deeper into, the mind and like liberation from this human experience that we can have is like, how can we connect to this greater source and, this remembrance that like, it will be okay. And like this deep trust in our path and our journey. And yeah, and like, and also like deep trust in our bodies too, and letting our path unfold, which, can be difficult, can be incredibly difficult.
I love this so much. Like what you're talking about. Yeah, that resonated with me in the workshop when you talked about the clearing the pathways. And that's a big part of what I do too. It's like these energetic pathways. Like where are we kinking the flow? Where can we create more space, more vitality, more openness, expansiveness, all of that, so we can hold and receive creation, right? Be this like receptacle, this receiving place.
Yeah. I've been sitting with this concept and talking about it, but like the invitation is like, we're creating this invitation and this like warm, nurturing space. And like, how do we cultivate that to invite life in?
Yeah, because we are. That's I talk a lot about that. We're calling in life, and what kind of welcoming space are we creating for an embryo to say, "I want to go there. I
Yes.
want to go." That looks
I,
like a cozy space. I had to talk with
yeah,
Scoot Blackson, who's an incredible speaker author. He wrote The Magic of Surrender, and we talked all about that. It was like literally,
love that.
what do our embryos, I mean, I believe in there's this communication, we can go real deep on this, but like we
Yeah.
are always sending out messages. And what messages are we sending out to our future little ones of like, is this a safe, welcoming environment to thrive in? Or is it like unsafe, hostile, stressful, right?
Yep. Yep. And like that, that the consciousness is so important. Like,
Mm-hmm.
consciousness in mind and body. And what are
Mm-hmm.
what are you cultivating? And I think also like that connection, right? The spirit babies, or like
Yeah.
this connection with the soul, um, is really important to create that invitation. I feel like a lot of times we feel like, um, you know, passengers to whatever's happening. And it's like, hey, the more that we can really be in the driver's seat, and not we can't control everything. We certainly can't, but like setting that intention for what we want and
Mm-hmm.
putting that invitation out there is so important.
We're talking a lot about like the soul too. I mean, that's what this podcast is, Soulful IVF. And it's like the soul of
Yes.
ourselves, the soul of our little ones, and increasing that connection, which is in our control. And I believe so much in being an active participant in this path. And this is one
Yeah.
way we can take more active role in like, okay, what are we putting in our body? No one else is doing that for us. We are choosing what we're putting in our body. I want to talk a little bit about the protein and some
Yeah.
specifics. Like, can you share a few key like tips? Or I loved when you made the mung beans for us. Like, and it took me 3 shops to try to find those mung beans. I'm like, where are these things? What you made was so delicious, just healthy food. Does that have a lot of protein in it? These mung beans?
Yes. The mung
Okay.
beans. Yes. Mung beans do have protein.
Texting you, I'm like, Madison, I'm like, I cannot find these. Where
Where
are
are
these things?
they? I know. It can be hit or miss, but I'm like, it's funny. I'm like, some stores carry it, some stores
Yeah.
don't.
And
But
then I found them at
I'm glad.
Natural Grocers. So shout out to them.
Yes. 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 Yes.
But
Yeah. So, looking at it, mung beans are really great. So a lot of times we'll use mung beans in Ayurveda because they're so easily digestible. So
mm,
when I support clients through like a digestive reset, you can call it a fertility reset. This can be so helpful where it's very nourishing, very easy to digest. It's tasty. You're adding spices which are going to support digestion, inflammation, and there's spices. I mean, spices are kind of like this hidden gold where they're, if you research spices, there are so many incredible benefits of
I need to
spices.
do that. I want to do that.
Yes. And like, cumin, coriander, turmeric, fresh ginger, like these are all things. If you have Indian food,
Mhm.
which Ayurveda is the traditional medicine from India, although you don't, you can use Ayurvedic principles and not eat Indian food, that's fine. But, adding those can really support digestion and like I talked about, all the benefits. Um, if you do eat meat, I like to say, slow cook it. That's going to be the most digestible way to have it. A lot of times I'll recommend, chicken, like chicken and vegetable soup, maybe put rice in there. So it's again, like very digestible by the body. That's what we're focusing on. And
Let me ask you a question real quick. White
yeah,
rice, brown rice, what's your favorite? What kind of rice should we be doing?
yeah, that's a good question. I really love red rice, actually.
Red. Okay.
Red rice. We call it shali rice, but it's very nutritious and it's red. And it's red, it's going to really support liver and blood. And so we know like blood is the carrier of nutrition to your baby, right? To your uterus. So I find that
Good
um
tip. Okay, good to
that's
know.
really good. Yeah. Or like wild rice too. And in
Yeah.
Ayurveda, again, it can really depend on your body, right? It's not like here's the formula for every single person. It's like what works for
Mm,
you, what's digestible for you and your body.
good tips. Thank you. So just like being mindful of what kind of protein we're choosing. So like the powders, the bars, all of that.
Yeah.
Are
It's like,
cold drinks not encouraged? I know when I was going through my own fertility path and I had a acupuncturist and he was guiding me and telling me about warming foods, the important, like what you're talking about,
yep.
avoiding some of like not to eat a lot of cold salads, things like that, but more like the stews and the warming foods. Any thoughts on like cold drinks or things like that?
Yeah. I mean, 100%, like the warm foods are really helpful. And to understand why, cold creates constriction,
Mhm.
contraction.
Yeah.
Warm creates openness and flow. So we want to support that warmth, especially pre-conception. We really want to be focusing on that. As
Okay.
far as cold drinks, yes, I definitely avoid that. And also, think about, your digestive fire. It's a fire. We want it to be warm. To you put things on your digestive fire breaks it down and continues the digestive process, then absorption process. But if something's cold, it's going to be harder. Your fire's gonna have to work harder. Versus if it's warm or room temperature, your fire's not going to have to work as hard. And that's what we want, right? We want your fire to be less focused on, yes, to digest, but not to be overburdened with digestion, right? To create the
Yeah.
ama. We want that clarity. We want our body to go and do any other like deep cleaning that needs to be done, right? Particularly when you're sleeping. That's when the liver is going to be doing a lot of processing and your digestion can focus on that.
What are your thoughts on coffee? I was doing green tea that was suggested to me, but
Yeah.
for my coffee drinker girls out there who are listening, like, should we be doing mushroom coffee? Should we be doing just one more little? I just while I have you on here, I'm like, I have to ask because maybe people are wanting the cold coffee drinks. Okay, is hot coffee okay? Or what would you suggest? One more thing.
Yeah.
Ask you about that.
Yeah, great. I mean, good question. I feel like again, it really depends, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
not a one size fits all, but for women who are finding that they have a lot of anxiety or their nervous system is just feeling like way upregulated, having caffeine is going to intensify that. And that's really important. So those of you who are more vata, who have more of that air and space, and again, like the anxiety, more dryness, medicinally, I would recommend not having coffee. Choose something that's herbal or, maybe decaf or, lower caffeine. That can
Mm-hmm.
be really helpful. For those who are more kapha and just feeling, more chill, maybe feeling a little bit more lethargic, having coffee can actually be good medicine, right? It brings balance, right? It can be really uplifting. So again, it really depends. If you do find that you are more vata and your nervous system is feeling it, having something like fat like milk can be helpful, and like milk, right? That can help to balance some of the effects. So again, it's not, a lot of times the answer is it depends, and it's like, let's understand the science a little bit more and be like, what qualities are you experiencing, what's going to be most supportive for you right now today. That might look different. Fall and winter, we see more of that vata. Summertime might be a much better time for you to have some of that, and you'd be fine with it.
Thanks for talking about the seasons of the year too, and
Yeah.
how that can relate to the doshas. I'm curious with us approaching this fire horse year, any thoughts with how does that relate to the fire, the pitta?
Yeah.
Um, any, I,
Wait, tell me more about the fire. You said fire hose,
fire
fire
horse,
horse. Okay, tell me
horse.
more. I'm like, I don't. Tell me
Oh,
more.
with the lunar year, the new lunar year. So we're still in this at the time of this recording. We're in January. It's like the year of the snake, the shedding
Okay.
still. And sorry, I didn't mean to put you on the spot. Like we're moving into this fire horse year.
Okay.
And I was curious how Ayurveda might play a role. And if you don't feel prepared to answer that, no pressure. Like I was just curious, like
Yeah.
this energy, this momentum, it's like we are going and it's supposedly going to last for another like 20 years or something like that. And I mean, I'm in
Oh.
quote midlife, and I've heard you say like um those of us in midlife are more in this pitta energy, right?
Yep. Yep.
um and is it earlier in our life that it's the vata? I can't remember exactly how you
Yeah.
said it, but
So kapha is like early.
oh, cough is early.
Think about
Okay.
like the growth. It's like the new beginnings is like planting the seeds.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, pitta is kind of like 20 to 40, 40/50. I know it's kind of a big range, but it also depends on um your constitution and how you're living, how you're caring for yourself. And then,
Okay.
40 to 50 can be more of that, like the vata stage.
Wait,
But yeah,
vata? 40 to
yeah,
50 is vata? Oh, it's not pitta.
no,
Oh, vata. Okay. So I'm in that, but I'm approaching pitta, I think.
yeah, or pitta is like the middle. So it goes kapha, pitta, vata. So kapha early life, pitta
Cough.
mid,
Oh,
and then
pitta's mid. So would that be 40 to 50 is the pitta?
so it depends. And again, it kind of depends on where you're at seasonally.
Oh.
So, if some women are approaching perimenopause earlier, maybe like late 30s, is
Mm-hmm.
like the vata could be, you could be feeling that. sooner,
Okay.
but that's why it kind of depends on your constitution and on, just how you're living, and, stress too plays a
Okay.
big part too. But,
Okay.
yeah, the Vata is a time of transition, right? So it kind of depends on you and your body, and, how
Mm,
things are playing out for you.
okay. So much to explore in this area. Yeah, I'm feeling the energy shifting and
Yeah.
it's fun. It's fun to explore this. There's so much to learn.
Yeah, there is.
And
Um, but if you want, I mean, I'm happy to answer the fire horse. Do you want me to
yeah,
answer
any
that?
thoughts that come through
Yeah.
when you hear that as we're moving into this new lunar year? It's like February 17th, and this episode might be released after that date. So we might be in it when we release this. But anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. So, with Pitta and fire, we think about, we liken that to like summertime, right? Where there's a lot of energy, heat, the Pitta, that fire horse, literally, like, the
Yeah.
imagery for me is,
Yeah.
yeah, you're making it happen. And it's
Yeah.
important, in that Pitta time, we can be so focused on goals that we forget to like surrender and enjoy and let go. I think that's such a big teaching.
Mhm.
Cooling foods, trying to like, cool yourself off so you're not literally on fire.
Yeah.
Cucumber, coconut are good foods to have to kind of cool off. But also, just I think mindset is such a big piece. And like I said, the
Mhm.
surrender piece is, spontaneity, right? Trying to enjoy. We can be so focused on that end goal. And it's like, how do you
Yeah.
really just enjoy this present moment?
Oh my gosh, so important. Um, yeah, living in the now, right? We get so far ahead of ourselves,
Yeah.
and that is another whole episode too, because I talk so much about doing the things that light you up and that bring you joy, and that I know you've talked about ohas. Did I say it?
Oh,
Or
just.
oja. Okay, you do say the J. Ojas.
Oh,
Ojas.
just.
And so that is share a little bit about what that is, like our life, um, our vitality, right? This life force.
Yeah, yeah. So I'll explain it. So we talked about digestion, we talked about the tissues, we talked about reproductive tissue being last. The byproduct of perfect digestion is what we call ojas. Ojas is immunity, and it is vitality. I think about it as this glow, this radiance. Like, we were talking about this earlier, but like when you feel
Mhm.
full of life, like ojas is when you are full of life. You were like
Mm.
bursting with life. And it's like people like, what are you doing? You look so good. Like, what did you change? Like that feeling, that sensation, that's
Mhm.
ojas.
The glow up from within.
Yes.
We all want some more of that.
Yes. Yes.
Because honestly, and I speak about this, like it enhances every other area of our life. I think what's so important to talk about too is
Totally
like
does.
everything that yes, this is focused for you going through fertility struggles and improve your vitality and fertility. But like for anyone that's birthing something that is, we are all creators in our own way.
Totally.
And Ayurveda applies to really anyone.
100%.
Your
Yeah.
specialty is in the fertility space, which that's why you're here
Yep.
as a specialist. Um, but I think that's really important to remember because it's not separate. Like it
No.
can help your partner, it can help your kids. Talk about that. You have two kids, and
Yep.
do you apply these kind of teachings to them? The foods you're making, the influence, it's impacting them. So share a bit about that.
Yeah, totally. Um, I use Ayurveda with them all the time. We haven't talked about it, but Ayurveda also, we talk digestion, food, also herbs, right? So, plant medicine, and plants can be incredibly beneficial for, remembering the cellular intelligence. And that's what we're, focusing on in Ayurveda, is that, hey, our cells are intelligent. We clear the pathway for our cells to do what they need to do, right? But like the amma, if we're not digesting food or life experience, things start to build up, right? Inflammation starts to happen. And when we
Mm-hmm.
clear it, we have that clarity of mind and body for, why we're here, what our purpose is, how to support others, and like really just, live life fully, like you've said. But herbs is such a helpful way to do that. So definitely, herbs, I will use herbs with them. Obviously, for small children, there's, less of a repertoire to use, but still, things that can be really beneficial. Food is a staple. I really focus on, what we're eating, focusing on freshly prepared foods. I make a green soup. It's like lentils with, greens, spices, parsley, and I blend it up, and they'll eat that, which like proud mama, like they'll eat,
Oh, I might need to
they'll
get
eat
that
the green
recipe from
soup.
you.
It's
My
so
daughter
good.
does not want the spice, like anything spice. It's like, forget it. So I want to start introducing that to her more.
Yeah. And it's not,
Um,
it's not spicy, but just like spices, right? I think that,
Spices.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, yeah, but I mean, I'm a proud mom. Like they'll eat, and I think being in utero and being exposed to different foods, and
Yeah.
even after, I'm like of course they have their days, but yeah, really focusing on a variety of foods that they'll eat, and um, yeah, just supporting them holistically too, and
Mm-hmm.
trying to teach meditation. That is a little more difficult. I think our 5-year-old's getting a little closer to that, but yeah,
Mm-hmm.
teaching the mind body practices is really helpful.
So important.
Yeah.
Remind me, did you experience fertility challenges yourself?
Yeah, I did not.
Mhm.
I did have, I think a lot of, and this is why I'm so passionate too about teaching around preconception and like the 90-day window, and like why this is so important. Yes, you want to get pregnant, but we really want to focus on a healthy pregnancy and the foundation of health for your child.
Yeah.
When our first was born, or when our first was conceived, I was struggling with a lot of digestive issues. I traveled abroad, and when I got home, it's like I, my stomach was so off, and I had lost a lot of weight and feeling really depleted. And we conceived. I had a good pregnancy. Right after I developed Bell's palsy, which is facial paralysis, and I do attribute that is just starting in depletion versus starting in deep nourishment. So that was a challenge, and then our second too. I have a lot of um, birth karmas, birth traumas too. But after our second, we had a near death experience with him, and he developed viral meningitis. And this was such a pivotal part for me, where he is, we weren't sure if he was going to survive, and really sitting at the edge of life and of death, and like just what a pivotal moment that is, as a parent, and thinking about like the soul. And at that point is like I could truly feel his soul deciding if he was going to stay or if he was going to leave. And it wasn't up to me, right? I think that's so important too, is like, hey, for conception, it's three souls. It's male, female, mom, dad, maybe there's a different partner in there. And then also baby soul, right? Like the soul contract, and what does that look like? And that was like a very painful experience, but also just opening me to this world. And after that, I was like, this is really what I want to focus on, is supporting women as they prepare for this journey too.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing a bit more of your
Yeah.
story and your passion behind this work.
Yeah.
Um, so grateful that we're connected, and
Yeah.
this has been an amazing conversation. I could probably talk to you a lot more and ask you a ton more questions, but like I want others to connect with you and to download your fertility type test, which I'll link it in the show notes, and your website information. I know you're on social media. How do you like people to reach out to you?
Yeah. Social media is great. Also my website. I do, if anyone is interested in like learning more about my approach or how it might support them in their journey, I do offer discovery sessions. So you can go on my website. It's truewellness.com, and happy to chat and see if it might be a good fit. I also do programs. So I do one-on-one work, and I also have, I call it the Conscious Conception Program, where we focus on, preparing the seeds, the soil, um, the nourishment, and timing, considering that too. So it's a really sweet program to support holistically.
Such important work. Thank you so much, Madison. We'll be in
Yes.
touch soon.
Thank you so much.
Welcome.